The state of New York has sued Valve for Counter-Strike cases in a large new lawsuit. You may have seen news about this, but it has potentially the effect to change a lot about how video games are monetized in the United States. We've seen this previously in Europe, where loot boxes were litigated by the European Union, and there were changes that were forced to be legally made to the way that gaming companies rolled out loot boxes. But I think what's very interesting about this new case, and Harris Peskin, resident lawyer of the Four Horsemen, is here to join us yet again to discuss this. He was very
only
excited
here a couple weeks ago, guys. I don't even know. And then
you
this,
were very excited when this came
and today
out.
we're, it's like we're talking about Monty, we're talking about this, and then all of a sudden we get the news on the LEC, and so it's just like, oh god, did we talk about that? Last time we spent 30 minutes talking about Riot's fighters, so I don't.
Listen, the permanent fourth horseman position is available.
Oh gosh!
So, if, you know, I'm just saying, the pay is lousy. You will be a pariah among your esports colleagues.
Oh,
but
no.
you know,
actually, you know, I don't mean to kind of Monty. I know you're doing the whole intro. I don't mean to cut you off. I will tell you, my esports colleagues, so to speak, they actually watch the show and they come to me.
Everyone does.
They come to me afterwards like, that was a really good show, Harris. I'm happy you did that. And so, like, you'd be surprised at some of the people too. It's actually kind of funny. I could drop. I'm not going to drop some names.
This is by far the biggest industry esports show.
For sure
so
it is, yeah.
you know, in terms of actually touching on the topics that affect the business side of things, and all of you guys who are interested in that. But yeah, this is an interesting new case, because we'll link the complaint below, as well as Valve has issued a how can I put this? A non-legally official response, but they have put out a response on Steam for kind of the layperson and the users, which is interesting. And I'm kind of surprised they did that. Apparently, they think it's serious enough to address to the lay Steam user before they actually get into it legally. So I think that says something about the size and scope
as we'll
of this
get to,
case.
I hate to say this, but I think they did that because it created a lot of market instability.
Right. Sure.
Like, for real, you know.
But the fact that they think they need that is interesting.
Yeah,
that just goes to show that this is, you know, an actual
As in
big
to make
deal.
people think like, oh, better trade now and something to spike it
Well,
up.
I mean, we'd already just had, if people recall, there were fundamental changes to the way CS skins worked, and it wiped out billions of dollars off the value in the market. And then you got the very dubious reporting out of China that people were committing suicide. No sources cited on that one. But I mean, the fact that there had just been this like market fluctuation, which ultimately the market fluctuation, I don't know if it's bad or good for Valve, because when people are selling a lot, Valve are getting a cut. But when value of skins stay high, is it better for skins to be valued higher and sold at less frequency because then the cuts are bigger? I don't know the numbers. No one does. Only Valve do. But I genuinely believe this statement, which wasn't just put on the Steam-powered website, people got it. It was in your email. If you had a Steam account, it was like, hey, guys, read this. It's like, I don't know. I think they were probably trying to quell fears this time around. So
before we get
we'll get to that.
Before we get to Valve's response, let's get to why this is a big deal. So the complaint has some really interesting points in it that connects this very distinctly to gambling. And at the core of the complaint is the idea that the people of New York have now been...
Which I am one of.
You are one of, as you can see.
Wait, are you actually a New York resident?
Oh, of
he
course.
has been
I'm wearing a
defrauded
New
by
York
Valve.
Islanders jersey right now.
Yeah, I didn't even register that because I don't follow hockey. So even with the NY. Were you out shoveling snow this winter? Or?
Oh gosh, it was quite a lot, man. I mean, I actually just moved from the city too, and I mean, I'll tell you right now, from Long Island, but it was a lot of snow this year. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, it really was.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am one of those residents.
He's been defrauded by the illegal gambling. And at the core of this is the concept, guys, that basically, you know, this creates an entire secondary market of value, and that the reason why this is gambling, because the core of the complaint alleges that this is illegal gambling, effectively. And the reason why is because when you play Counter-Strike, you can opt into paying $2.49 in order to acquire a key to open a case. The case is locked. The inside has odds. It is then very much, and I mean, this is true, looks like a slot machine when you open it, in that it spins around and it gets close to something really good and then passes it, right, to titillate you with the possibility of winning. The odds of actually winning something that is more valuable than the $2.49 that you put is extremely low. Certainly some things are worth $10,000, but they go through all the odds of the cases in the complaint, and basically saying that, this is fundamentally no different from actual gambling, actual casinos, because you're not getting what you paid for. And then also, effectively, this could be sold on the secondary market. And Valve has, obviously, this has been a huge issue for Valve over the years, but it's also been hugely profitable. So I don't think Valve minds dealing with these problems. But we have had a long history of skin gambling websites, as in Valve, because it hooks, Valve's property, effectively, the skins are getting used in gambling, which they have tried to stamp out many times. Richard basically discussed that. Yeah, exactly. They say they can't do it because we should start with the mechanisms of how this works, because it's not actually on the Steam platform, because you can't withdraw money from the Steam platform. So you can trade skins on Steam directly through the community marketplace, but you can't withdraw funds. So how this ends up working is that these sites basically act like middlemen. If you're not in Counter-Strike, you can go to, this is how it works. You go to the skin website, and they function by taking a cut of the sale. And when they act as middlemen, basically they're trying to make sure that you get, there's no fraud. When the skin is sold from someone's Steam inventory, it arrives in your inventory and the money arrives in their bank account. Now, there's tons of fraud that has happened within this for obvious reasons. So you need these middlemen sites in order to do this.
Essentially like escrow, if people understand the concept.
Yes.
Like if you were making a traditional bet, you sometimes use something like that,
Yeah, and so what these middlemen sites do is they rely on their reputation for doing this without fraud. That's what makes one better than another, and possibly like the lower cut they take. And they have a bunch of usually bot Steam accounts. And so these bot Steam accounts act, as Thorin is saying, as the escrow account. And then it is verified by the company that this is the real skin, and then they process the financial transaction.
I don't think that's the only thing that they're talking about, though. I mean, that's one aspect of it, but they also talk a lot. They spend some time in the complaint talking about the ability to use the Steam marketplace funds to buy real physical, tangible objects. And then they also talk a little bit about how they actually bought some guy from the OAG, I think, in New York, basically bought a Steam Deck using the funds they'd used to buy something.
Yes.
And then they went to a local store and exchanged that Steam Deck for real money. So
I mean, at
I'm
some
amazed
point,
the story ends there. You would think with what an obvious setup that is, it's like, and then he bought heroin and overdosed. Like, so do you want all your kids to die heroin? I almost thought you were going there, mate. I thought this was going somewhere.
And then the state of New York indicted the entirety of all economies in human history. Like, I mean, at a certain point, it does get ridiculous.
Now, Chapo is fucking turning state's evidence on Valve or something.
But yeah, but the point is like, I just want to describe for people who aren't used to Counter-Strike, like why these secondary markets even exist, because it is important to this that it gets exchanged at some point for real money. And Valve can't stop. Well, Valve won't stop this because it's extremely profitable for Valve.
Also, as you say, Monty, the reason it's worth pointing out is maybe if someone's from League of Legends, they actually think in the client you're like betting the skin in a Valve-based thing where it's like betting against them or a gambling. That's not the case at all. It's true. There's many layers of abstraction here.
Yes, and also Valve says that they can't stop this because, they've banned millions of bot accounts, but obviously people can just keep making Steam accounts, and so they just, can't. I don't know if it's true, but say they can't do anything.
Did you catch the bit about the CEO team owner, actually? I'm trying to find back when they were talking about that. They had there's like some quote in here about an esports team CEO's 11-year-old kid or something like that.
Yes.
That was I think they bought something. Go ahead.
I've got the complaint in front of me. I'll read it to you. It's what do you call the numbers in a legal document? Because it's point.
The defendants?
Point acceptable. So it's 0.145 basically.
Oh, are you talking about the paragraph number?
Yeah, the paragraph number. There you go. Paragraph number 145. Moreover, Valve does not appear to enforce its age limitation, even when it becomes aware of a violation. For example, in 2017, the CEO of a professional esports league right, reached out to Valve about an alleged theft of virtual items from the account of his 11-year-old son, who was playing one of Valve's most popular games, and then in quotes, a lot. Valve determined that the items were not, in fact, stolen. There is no indication Valve closed the child's account or took any other action due to the child's violation of the SSA.
Who is that, by the way?
The great mystery. I actually was reading it too, and I was like, "Wait, who was this?"
You know what? Like, what if it was like the Activision Blizzard guys trying to get one back over on Valve? Because Activision Blizzard had faced, they had that monopoly lawsuit, for the Overwatch League. I was consulted on that one, and then there was something else.
Professional. It's so funny. I was reading that. I'm just like, I wonder who that is.
Well, I had a chuckle, but it's not. Yeah, it's not the core point of this. So, Harris,
sorry.
Why don't we talk about the merits of this case? Because I think it's really interesting that they can allege that this is straight up gambling. It's something that has been tossed around before. In other lawsuits as well, but no one's been able to actually make this stick yet.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, actually.
All right. Well,
yeah.
Why not?
Well, I think that Cater versus Churchill Downs in Washington actually did a somewhat decent job of, or made a similar claim. And for those of you that don't know, that was a case related.
That's everybody. Nobody knows. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, whatever. Sorry, what game was that? It was Big Fish Casino, essentially, and. I guess it's just some sort of like it's just some sort of like lottery or spin the wheel kind of game where you needed coins in virtual currency to spin that wheel, and you would lose more often than not. And sometimes, and basically you need to fund that with money, right? And that would give you, if you won or use whatever this casino mechanism was, it would give you the opportunity to play the game more, right? And so, in theory, you're basically there's this chance that you might have a prize, which is playing the game more. Because like you need these coins to continue to play the game. Anyway, the case actually pertained. It's hard to kind of like do this without having the case like on the screen, but basically, the idea here was that there was an allegation, or rather there was a question as to whether or not there was a prize that was distributed by virtue of the fact that when you spun this wheel, you got the chance to continue to play on this game, right? And basically what they said was, because you were going to be able to continue to play, because your game was going to continue to be enhanced, or you could continue to play the game with this thing happening, that actually was a prize that was actually being given out by this game, and therefore was a thing of value. And the question of thing of value is oftentimes the question in these cases, like whether or not, in order for before I even go there, right? When you're looking at gambling, there's three elements of it, and maybe it's just helpful to talk about the three elements of gambling. You have prize, consideration, and chance, right? Those are the big three elements. And so the question is, am I putting money up for a chance to win a prize? That's kind of how the analysis usually turns. And I think that in Churchill Downs, the argument was you're staking something of value upon a chance, and that you're going to receive something of value in the event that the thing goes well. And the thing of value there was the chance to continue playing the game. I think the question here, which is the argument that typically gets made in these kinds of cases, so that's Churchill Downs. I think that the argument that gets made here is typically one which is like, look, and this is the case in baseball card trading cases as well. Like if you look at Schwartz or you look at some of those other baseball things, they basically say that you are receiving what you're getting. The thing of value is just any cards without specificity as to the specific kind of card that you're looking for, right? And so that is kind of the distinction that needs to be made in these cases. Whereas in that case, they're basically saying that you might win a thing of value to basically go ahead and have a chance to continue playing. In this specific case, in the New York case, kind of shifting back here, there's a very big effort that is being made on the part of Letitia James to basically establish that there is a third-party market which creates this thing of value beyond just the element of continued play, because that is not at issue here. Continued play is not at issue here. There's a third-party market which is a thing of value because all these people are paying money on these third-party websites for this thing. And so putting aside the third-party gambling element, there's really two issues of this. One, there's the Steam marketplace, which we talked about. You could exchange money on the Steam marketplace for tangible objects, which could then in theory be put into the economy. And two, there's actually a mechanism by which you could use those bots and you could sell on third-party websites. And so that's where that argument is coming up, because that is the argument. This is a thing of value that you're receiving. This can actually be exchanged, similar to how in Churchill Downs, the thing of value was continued play on that game. And so that, and by the way, there's a real, in Churchill Downs at least, I think the argument would be there was a monetizable, or there's a direct amount that could be attributed to that thing of value, because you could see how much money was needed to fund that coin to continue to play that game. And so that would kind of be the argument similar to what we're talking about here. Hopefully that I explained that well. I mean, I kind of just went into three different cases.
Just to add on to the Cater versus Churchill Downs case, because this was back in 2018. It went all the way up to the 9th circuit of appeals.
Yeah, it's right before I think it was the Court of Appeals in 9th Circuit. So that's right before the Supreme Court.
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't quite get to the Supreme Court. But basically what they also argued was because users could exchange the chips among themselves, and you'll understand why this will relate to Steam, that I could induce any value from you. We could have a private conversation, and I'd say, I'll give you 1,000 chips, you give me $1,000, right? So even though the chips had no endemic value in the game and couldn't be directly exchanged off-site, the fact that we could trade them in hermetically sealed, hermetically sealed economy meant that we could have off-site agreements, and therefore the ruling of the 9th Circuit, blah blah blah, they said that constitutes pretty much gambling as we would understand it in the state of Washington.
Correct. And so I think that's kind of where and other courts have come out differently on this issue. And really it comes down to, I think, at least in Churchill Downs, I'm just going to kind of, I don't know if this is something that your listeners want me to do, but I'm just going to read the statute. Gambling is defined as the staking or risking something of value, and that's very broad language. Something of value, so that's consideration. That's a consideration element. That's one consideration. Upon the outcome of a contest of chance or a future contingent event not under the person's control, chance, upon an agreement or understanding that the person or someone else will receive something of value, right? And so again, we're using the word something of value. That is a very, and so it's important to kind of take Cater versus
you have to
Churchill
prove
Downs.
Value is what you're saying.
Yeah, the something of value it's not money, it's something of value, which is an incredibly broad statement, right? That needs to be distinguished. You need to look at that differently from how other cases have historically done their own gambling laws. So that's in Washington State. But if you look at a case, and Richard, I think I said this briefly, Mason v. Machine Zone, which was a case in 2017 that took place in the Fourth Circuit. I think it was the Court of Appeals, Fourth Circuit. That was a case that looked at a different Maryland statute. And in that Maryland statute, the analysis did not use the verbiage something of value. What it used was money. And so that is a very distinct concept. So, but Machine Zone, Mason v. Machine Zone, actually came out differently. So basically, on the loss recovery statute, which they were suing under Maryland's loss recovery statute, a person who loses money at a prohibited gaming device may recover the money as if it were a common debt. And so there was a question then as whether there was a loss of money at this point when you're putting money into this game of war game, which can then be expended on their in-game casino, right? Whether you were losing money. And they're basically saying, well, you're not losing money because the other side's not, there's no one that's really gaining money. And what do they mean by that? What they're basically saying here is, and they actually had they said that you can't lose money unless somebody else gains money. And they're getting their money either way, and you're getting what you bargained for either way. You're getting your ability to spin that wheel, and they're getting their money regardless of whatever you come up with. And so that's kind of that first initial element, that first kind of barrier before we even get to the next point, which is there a tradable marketplace for this thing, which is kind of what you just talked about.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in that case, and Mason v. Machine Zone, they basically said the terms of service actually don't allow you to trade, and they don't allow you to trade these accounts. There's nothing that allows you to trade the currency that can be won at the casino. The only thing that could happen is you could, on a black market, sell your account, but at that point, you're selling the entire account. You're not selling the specific currency. You might win at that casino, if that makes sense. So that is not, money either that's being, lost in order to be potentially gained in the future. And that's, as you said, distinct from what was happening in Churchill Downs. But it is also interesting when compared to the Valve issues. Sorry to talk your ear off here. I know that.
No, definitely. That's exactly why you're here.
Great.
That's exactly why you're here, to talk our ears off about this very specific topic that varies state to state as well. So.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot that that goes into all this kind of stuff, and certainly I don't know that, I will say that just in terms of New York's statute, when you look at New York's statute in particular, it also uses very broad language when it defines gambling. And so gambling in New York is defined as a person engages in gambling when he stakes or risks something of value upon the outcome of a contest of chance or a future contingent event not under his control or influence, upon an agreement or understanding that he will receive something of value in the event of a certain outcome. So again, the question I think is, would you say that, and I think forget about kind of the third-party gambling websites that exist off the Steam platform. I think what they're talking about here is when you go ahead and you have a box drop and you go buy a key, are you staking money to open that box and potentially receive something of value when you open that box? And that's why they spend so much of this complaint kind of trying to establish a third-party marketplace that exists for these things. And I don't know if this was in the initial complaint because I was reading the amended complaint today, but I think that the bigger question too is, does Valve kind of know about that? Does Valve kind of know about these third-party websites that exist in the ecosystem? And they kind of actually I don't even know how they got these, but they went through like emails of Valve employees basically instructing, when they were doing takedowns of websites, not to go after certain websites, which was very interesting to kind of read about because they were only concentrating on the gambling websites. They weren't concentrating on the marketplace websites. But the point, I think, of what Letitia James is doing is she's explaining that they knew about those third-party market websites as well, and they were just choosing not to take them down.
Well, I mean, it would be impossible for them not to know. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Of course they know.
I think the most compelling part of the argument, having read the complaint through several times now, is they actually demonstrate that Valve facilitates the exchanging of skins with third-party websites, and that
was very interesting.
I think that is, having it's similar to a number of lawsuits that have failed. That part, the specificity of it all, and using the actual examples, that part for me is the most compelling because I've covered pretty much every gambling lawsuit relating to skins as they've happened, and no one got into the weeds like that and actually showed how you can take a link specifically to use with a third-party website, and you can use that to take the skin out of the theoretically hermetically sealed market and exchange it for cash.
That was, and just to kind of read what it said in 101 here, and this is in the amended complaint. In 2016, Valve prepared to send a series of cease and desist letters to skins gambling websites. This is probably in the wake of everything that happened in 2016. I don't know if you remember the Washington State Commission letters to Valve that they kind of traded back and forth at that point. A Valve employee noticed that OPSkins, a skins marketplace that did not offer gambling at the time, was on the list of intended recipients of the cease and desist. The employee emailed several Valve colleagues writing, "I don't think we need to send a letter to OPSkins and other real money out sites. Correct? They aren't gambling." The employee's view that Valve's enforcement efforts were not targeting cash marketplaces was quickly confirmed, and neither OPSkins nor any other marketplace site received a cease and desist letter. So I think what they're really going through what they're really painstakingly doing here is they're trying to establish that Valve is keenly aware of all of these third-party marketplace websites, and then they're also trying to establish that they permit and encourage the trade on third-party trading websites. And I think, as you were saying, Richard, they have the was it the box that they have, they have like a trade URL essentially, which is required to go ahead and do to execute those trades on those third-party websites, and they're facilitating that. And they're like, well, why does that exist?
Wait a minute, as in, why can you link to a trade? Surely that you just do it with a friend and be like, here's the link to do the trade.
I think that there's
like a weird gotcha. I don't know what the gotcha is there.
Yeah, I think what they're saying here is, I'll just read it. With that understanding, Valve designed the Steam platform to facilitate the purchase and sale of virtual items on third-party marketplaces. For example, Valve provides each Steam user with a Steam trade URL, which enables users to buy and sell virtual items from their Steam inventory on third-party marketplaces.
It seems like this whole thing's getting blurred, though. Like, that's about whether you can buy the item, not whether you can gamble it. Like, that's what the distinction.
They say that because it's about the case opening itself. So they're saying the case opening is gambling because you can sell the item for real money is a key part of the argument.
Right.
So they're facilitating by having trades be able to happen off-site via the URL, that constitutes that these things have actual monetary value, which is why this is gambling.
The only way Valve could avoid this is when you open a case, you get the item and it can never be sent to anyone else in any of the
That's
contracts.
what they're arguing.
By the way, I can tell you an obvious immediate way that would be a nightmare, even if you didn't want gambling. Well, how could you ever have another account?
It's a bad game.
Yeah, what about if your account gets banned? What if you want to change accounts? You can only own one account ever. You know what I mean?
That would be the same argument that you would have, say, in a game like League of Legends, where sure, you could buy the skins or but also you can get random boxes with the skins that have been discontinued that have rarity to them, and therefore they're bound to your account. And also, you could just make the argument that you sell the account, right? So
yeah, but that's exactly. It doesn't even make sense. There's one extra step, isn't it? In that scenario, I make a new account. I only get it onto that one. It's the same with the bot example you just gave earlier. Then I sell you the account and I give you real money, so you can never try.
You guys probably know this, but when you're browsing in incognito mode, it's not making you invisible. Obviously, your ISP, your mobile provider, your Wi-Fi admin can all get data from your browsing history. Google recently settled a $5 billion lawsuit after being accused of secretly tracking users in incognito mode. Google's defense? Incognito does not mean invisible. In fact, all your online activity is still 100% visible to a lot of third parties unless you use our sponsor, ExpressVPN, which also is at its lowest price ever. Plans are starting at just $3.49 a month. That's only 12 cents a day. I'd imagine you might actually save money because another use for this is to access different countries' subscription services that you're already paying for. For example, Netflix may have the movie you want to watch in France, but not in America. So if you VPN over to France, well, you just saved yourself a potential rental fee that you might have paid otherwise, and you're still paying for Netflix as a service. So it can be very useful, particularly if you're following along with films with us on 4Play, in addition to watching the 4 Horsemen here. So guys, it's super easy to use. It's just an app. It sits on your phone. I have it running in the background constantly because I'm in and out of locations with public Wi-Fi, and I want to make sure that my data is protected. You can even install it on certain routers so you can get network-wide VPN and just run everything through it if you want. But laptops, I'm using it actually right now as I'm recording this. I'm VPN to America here from Korea. So it's super easy, just kind of lives in the background. You select your server, press a button, it turns on, and it is done. And also for US customers, certain plans now include Identity Defenders, which is a new suite of tools to get your data removed from data broker websites. It alerts you when your data appears on the dark web, and it even insures you against data theft for up to $1 million. It's rated #1 among VPNs by top tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge. You guys can secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/horsemen. That's horsemen, plural, MEN. That's expressvpn.com/horsemen to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months. expressvpn.com/horsemen. Thank you to ExpressVPN.
What's annoying me about this is it seems, get us ready, I'm going to do the naive thing where I ask why the legal system is absurd and capricious and in particular and doesn't do a generalized rule. So here's the question, Harris, right? What I don't get is this. Right now, in America, I'm supposed to believe you can only gamble in certain states, except, of course, certain people sponsor our site, so I'll say it in a very general way. There's both fantasy sports and then there's these markets, believe it or not, Harris, that look an awful lot like gambling with extra steps and different verbiage. In fact, let's even go one step further and say maybe they intentionally tell you, don't ever use gambling verbiage, just do the gambling, but in an abstract way. Now, what's bizarre is I happen to know the reason why they're actually legal in many states, including, say, 50 states, because actually those people spent millions of dollars greasing palms and lobbying politicians and getting certain things passed so that magically they're not considered gambling, right? Essentially, here's my naive question. Is this one of the problems that Valve has? As Valve thought, well, we'll just get away with it and we don't have to go through, let's say, that kind of a process where you can't try and get sort of like a special consideration or loophole made for you. Is that part of the issue here? Because what I don't get is this has also been going on since 2013 in CSGO. Like, it's not like it started 5 minutes ago. Like, why are we waiting until now? And then why is this in particular so like almost like hunted? But then, like I say, as far as I can tell, more direct. Remember, Valve doesn't allow on their system you to gamble, but these websites absolutely on their site with extra steps are doing a form of gambling. How does that work? What's the distinction there?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'll take that like in two separate ways. Yeah. So the first thing is actually, I was reading the just like the history on this on the New York website, and they actually entered into apparently a tolling agreement in 2023, meaning there was a statute of limitation. I think what they're saying is there's a statute of limitations that might have told, and that they were basically agreeing that they're going to allow it to continue. So I think that this has been on the New York. I think it's been on their radar for quite some time. I think the better question is, and I think, Thorin, you're absolutely right, actually, when you say this. Why are certain things not gambling, but other things are? And I actually think Valve is really intelligent in the way they kind of did their whole, like, I guess, email to everybody, that everyone just pops up in their, in their inbox and just like, wait, what? Like, this is the same thing as trading a pack of cards. Like, what is different about this? It's not like, and then it is not like, look, no one's going to tell me they don't know a secondary marketplace for Pokemon cards exists, right? That's not what you're going to say. And
which is what Valve said, guys. In their response publicly, they basically made the claim that how is this any different from buying a pack of Magic the Gathering or baseball or Pokemon cards, which we all know have secondary markets that are not supplied by the companies, Wizards of the Coast for Magic of the Gathering isn't the company that owns the stores that's selling the cards on the secondary market, right? So aren't they exactly the same? Sure, they make the thing, but they sell it for a fixed price, and everybody else, isn't that gambling too? Which, maybe Valve's trying to take down the whole system.
Right. But I mean, I really think that's the question, right? Like, how is this in any way at all distinct from just a pack of cards? Because like it is,
and baseball cards have been sold for 100+ years at this point.
Yeah, that's also why I found it so weird, the way that, as I joked about it earlier, but there almost was like what the fucking yellow journalism would do, where they'd also sensationalize the story. This kid that bought a knife and stabbed someone's right. The part about that I find really weird, Harris, is this.
They did that.
They are trying to imply like an 11-year-old boy. Who the fuck do you think buys Pokemon cards? Look, I know actually that's almost a joke question because there's a lot of loser fucking men do it, but loads of kids. It's even marketed to fucking kids. The weirdest thing about that
Don't look on my shelves.
Their
Don't look on my shelves.
Their entire abstract form of gambling is marketed directly to kids who, by the way, understand the value of those cards the least. Who hasn't had a stupid little nephew who gets into that and gets immediately wrecked on the first week and has all the shit cards and gets all the holos traded away. Like, I would the idea that's in the legal thing, and we don't even consider that anything weird or sinister. But then they're taking the idea of skins, which, as we pointed out, essentially you have to argue Valve just has knowledge someone else allows you to do this. You're not ever saying they do it themselves, but then that's somehow sinister because an 11-year-old boy did. Like, I don't get where's the stakes coming from for that? What's the angle on that?
I think that there's a couple of separate things. So I think that the argument that New York would kind of return with is Valve, very similarly to Pokemon cards, the reason why there's such a market for buying Pokemon cards is because there's a secondary market for the sale of those Pokemon cards.
Yep.
And so basically Valve, in theory at least, is profiting from the secondary market for those Pokemon cards, or rather Pokemon would be profiting from the second, because people don't really play, at least put it like this. I had Pokemon cards. I don't have them anymore. Richard, apparently you've got walls of Pokemon cards.
It's MTG. It's MTG. That's,
okay,
that's my sin. That's my.
I collected hockey cards for a long time. But I don't anymore. But
Duncan and I used to do Panini football stickers. Would have been our equivalent of baseball cards.
No, that's cool. Anyway, so all I would say is the market for the existence of that secondary market is actually causing them profit. And that's kind of probably that is, I think, actually at least some of what they're saying. I mean, there's two kind of arguments here, right? There's the argument that there's a secondary market that they're profiting from because of it's kind of making people want to spend more when they're opening the loot box, and I think that's actually a legitimate argument. And then there's also the argument that there are these sales happening on the Steam community market, and they're taking a direct commission from those things. They're taking a 15% commission when virtual items are sold in the Steam community market, and they're also obviously getting the key, whatever the key dollar value is, like $7.49 or $2.49 or whatever.
By the way, along those lines, though, two things. One, a quick Google, whether it's right or not, tells me that Valve pays taxes. They're not like a company that's offshore. So one thing that's weird about that is you get your cut of that already, US government. I don't even get the angle, so you get funded by that. Then secondly, the whole argument of, but there's a secondary market and they're aware and they know that makes them. Does anyone know what a comic book is? Does no one remember in the 90s when comic books got all the shit on artists to make variant covers that were limited edition, and everyone bought them, much like now people buy Lego sets, knowing that if I buy this and hold on to it, I'm gambling that actually in 2 years this is worth 5 times more, and in 20 years it's worth 100 times. That's, as far as I know, loads of nerd culture.
Here's the thing, Duncan, though. When sports gambling was legalized, and again, I was like kind of very involved in what was happening in Vegas with esports gambling. I was living there at the time and trotted out as an esports expert to a bunch of casinos about how secure it was to bet on esports stuff. When this was at a time when other states that had sports gambling illegal were bringing it in. Well, here was the thing you had to agree. In New York in particular, the New York Gambling Commission, it's 51% tax, flat rate for the money that you generate, the profits that you generate running a sports betting operation. But you also have to agree it's something like 10 million a year goes to like some one is like 5 of it goes to like stop gambling addiction, and the other 5 goes to something to do with kids. I don't even know what the fuck it is. So it's a lot of money that the state gets to raise by allowing you to do this. And the problem is Valve are paying taxes, yes, but they're not paying those taxes. And so I think wanting to have that demarcation of like what Valve are doing is gambling, it's a huge revenue generator for any state that they are found to meet the legal definition of gambling within.
Yeah, I mean, there's also other. I mean, look, I think the history of gambling in America has just been such a shit show, and that's primarily because America was founded by a bunch of Puritan like idiots, in like a long time ago.
God bless.
That ran away from you guys. So
God bless you.
Too
God
weird
bless.
for England.
Yeah.
God bless.
Absolutely. And
we've all seen The Witch. We've all seen The Witch.
But they had very strict rules on what was sinning, I guess is the right way to put it. And so a lot of these statutes that exist are I guess left over from those old times and that old kind of ideology. And so a lot of these statutes are really trying to look at what they're based in this ideology that was around when America was primarily a religious country that was run by a bunch of Puritans. And so we're restricting something right now that perhaps shouldn't be restricted, I think is probably the best way to do it, and or best way to say it. And it's not even like, by the way, Valve doesn't disclose its odds on achieving these things. It's not like Valve is hiding
had to because of the
Chinese
European
stuff,
lawsuits that happened.
And I think they actually say in the complaint that there was a Chinese law that actually required that they go ahead and disclose the exact odds of achieving every single.
Yeah, but this is what happened in the EU as well, because it was a big deal with Overwatch loot boxes, and Activision Blizzard got pulled into this in Europe, where they had to disclose the odds of all of the different like skin levels that you could possibly get.
Yeah, which is what's happening here too.
So
remind Activision
my point
Blizzard
is that
called
there
them
has been
surprise mechanics.
but there has been this transparency around gaming loot boxes for some time, not because of American law, but because of European and I guess possibly Chinese law as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of bring it back to the case law that we were talking about here, I think that it kind of makes sense to talk a little bit about what they're actually what they're doing here, and they're bringing this under 225.05 and 225.10, a Class A misdemeanor for 225.05, but a Class E felony for promoting gambling in the first degree if that were to happen. Wow. And the damages they're actually looking for are quite significant. And I would say that, put it like this, so they're looking for full restitution to consumers, right? So, and I don't know what that looks like in the state of New York, but I'm imagining tens of millions of dollars. I mean, this is one of the largest marketplaces in the world, really. I mean, disgorgement of all monies and a fine of 3 times the amount of its gain. That's kind of what they're looking for here.
And so also, this would just be the stage one, because if they win, then obviously every state does this to get a payday.
Every single state is going to do that at that point. And so this is look, do I think they'll be successful? I'm not sure they're going to be successful. I have a hard time believing that this is in any way different than a regular card, like any kind of card. And that marketplace has existed for generations, not even decades, generations.
Naive question: have people tried with like baseball cards to do these similar lawsuits and things like that?
I mean, so interestingly, I haven't been able to find too much that have come up under 225 or any of these New York ones, but they do bring them under RICO a lot. And I think I was mentioning that RICO is a bit of a different different elements here, and just to prevail on a civil RICO claim, a plaintiff must prove that the defendant engaged in conduct of an enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity and establish that the defendant caused injury to plaintiff's business or property. I think that basically on that last one, the defendant caused injury to plaintiff's business or property. And this is not a civil RICO claim, which is a little bit different than what we're talking about here. We're talking about Class E felony allegation, right? But this is you need to show that the plaintiff in a RICO claim suffered a concrete financial loss. And I think the argument in a lot of these cases, like Chesed or Schwartz, which are some of these card trading cases, is that basically you're not showing me that you have any kind of a loss because you're getting what you paid for. You're getting that. I forgot to even mention this
earlier, Harris. This is even why I find it bizarre that the abstracted fantasy gambling is okay. Remember, on that one, all I gain is the experience of doing the abstracted gambling. I can lose everything on that. If I pick no when it's yes, then I get nothing. As you say, with a card or a skin, I get something. It might be a shit card or a skin, but I go in knowing I am getting something in return. That's why I find
it's not like Valve hiding the ball in that. They're telling you what the chances are, and they're
not telling me you're going to get this crazy thing and then I get nothing, or I get the shit skin. Everyone goes in knowing you can get these potential things and there's a chance element, surely.
Yeah, and this is just a citation from another case, but the Fifth Circuit held that the plaintiffs did not suffer an injury cognizable under RICO. We agree with the district court that plaintiffs do not allege that they received something different than precisely what they bargained for, 6 to 20 cards in a pack with a chance that one of those cards may be of Ken Griffey Jr. And that is kind of how I think you look at it in this situation too. It's very analogous. You're not... you're being disclosed what the probabilities are for you to go ahead and receive a chance card in this case, which would just be a very valuable skin. And they're not hiding the ball on that, and you might not win that skin. And so you're playing, you're going ahead and you're spinning that wheel with understanding of that you're getting something, but might not be that thing. And
this message is sponsored by Raycon. And this spring, while you're out and about, you may want to be hearing the noise of the world around you. And if that's the case, you may want to try their Essential Open Earbuds. These do not go inside your ear canal. Instead, they just sit on top and wrap around your ear, but they're still incredibly secure. I've taken them to the gym and they stay on no problem. So that's a great option for you if you want to be able to hear the world around you. And if you want to be able to shut it out, well, Raycon's got options for you too. These are their essential everyday earbuds right here. These have active noise cancellation at a fraction of the price of many other brands because, you know what? They are selling direct to consumers. They don't have to pay for a bunch of retail spots. So the quality is there and the price is lower. I used these just the other day. I was on a 2-hour subway ride and I blocked the noise out. I was actually watching One Piece for Nerd Legion. If you guys want to go check out that show, it was great. So I was able to get that done on the subway free free from disturbance. So if you want something that can block that out, that's great. They also have awareness mode, so you can toggle that just by hitting one button on the earbud itself. But if you want to be able to hear the stuff going around you, you don't want stuff inside your ears, they have the essential open earbuds as well. They've had over 3 million customers, and they're half the price, as I said, because they're not paying for all that retail markup, and they have a guarantee where if you don't like them, you can send them back within 30 days and they'll return your money. So there's no downside here, guys. You can try them out. They also have multi-point connections, so you can connect to multiple devices and it'll just switch seamlessly, and 36 hours of battery life. I've never run out of batteries with these. So they've been fantastic for me. I use them all the time, whether I'm at the gym, whether I'm on public transportation, whenever I need earbuds. These are in my pocket. They're my go-tos. So the essential open earbuds are perfect for refreshing your routine this spring. Go to buyraycon.com/horsemen, plural, open. Horsemen open to get 20% off. So that's raycon.com/horsemen open for 20% off. Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring our show.
I mean, ultimately, I guess we'll kind of see where, the issue is here that this is, first of all, we're not going to get an answer to this for a very, very long time. A very, 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 very long time.
The lawyers are in the room already agreeing to delay the proceedings.
I mean, that is also essentially something that people always do on these big cases, right? You just make it last as long as possible. Also,
everyone gets paid.
Yeah.
There is no way that this case is not. So in New York, the Supreme Court is actually the lowest court, and the Court of Appeals is the highest court. In New York, this is going to the Court of Appeals. Like, I have a very hard time seeing any world in which the state of New York and Letitia James are able to successfully win at the Supreme Court level and not have this go all the way to the highest court, the Court of Appeals. Yeah. It most certainly will. And so this is years from now. Like, we're talking about like years that this is going to take, which is just, maybe there's some sort of a settlement that they have out of court, which is just basically like, look, stop doing this. Maybe, but the problem is this is such a key part. Like, they said that billions of dollars is how much this this is being transacted on this third party marketplace. I have a hard time believing Valve is going to want to reshape its the way that its ecosystem works. So assuming that it doesn't, we could be here several years from now talking about the same exact thing, and who the heck knows what's happened by that point.
Let me ask you one more naive question on this exact topic, right?
I don't think it's
being
naive.
As this isn't a specific person saying, hey, I was ripped off and I'm suing you for this, and this is like the government essentially. Does that mean that if at the end nothing happens and no change to Valve, then the government just wasted millions of dollars of taxpayers' money trying to run this case down?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that the argument they would make is that they're trying to make the taxpayers money, because they're going to go ahead and remit this payment to the consumers,
and they believe in the merits of the case,
and they believe in the merits of the case. But you're right, Thorin. There is a political element to it, obviously. I mean, and I'm not going to want to talk too much about this, but I'm sure you guys might want to. But obviously, Letitia James is a very noted figure.
I'll set it up for you, Harris. Right.
Yeah.
So just so
everybody
knows,
the fact her name even sounds like litigious is so fucking crazy.
Oh yeah, Letitia James.
No, this is real. It's all Matrix.
Exactly. But I'll just set it up for all of the viewers. Harris is our beloved flaming New York lefty. I'm a radical centrist. I don't even know where I'm AKA useful idiot.
I don't actually know I would take the position I'm a flaming lefty.
You don't like that? Is that too bad?
No, I think actually, because I find myself yelling at liberals more often than not these days. But
Do you know what?
That's how it starts, mate.
Yeah. Late onset republicanism. No, but also as well, I will say the rise of what I'm calling at the moment the retard right is also very infuriating. But yeah, so we don't talk a lot about politics, but it's not because we can't. It's just it's become also insufferable and tiring that we'd rather not in these spaces. It's the one area esports might be more interesting.
but seriously, I think Letitia James obviously. I think she's a politician at the end of the day, and that's really what it comes down to. Is that Letitia James is I think she is a politician. I think that she's also up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she's also up for election in 2026.
She is. Yes.
And so, look, I mean, there's a couple of elements. First of all, unless she's getting primaried in New York, she's not going to lose. there is no Republican that is going to win in New York in any statewide election. It hasn't happened in decades. I don't imagine it will happen anytime soon. But I think it's correct to say that, one, she might have her eyes on higher office at some point. And this is, being able to say that you sued Valve Corporation and you won a lot of money and gave that to New Yorkers and consumers, and you reshaped the gambling ecosystem in America is actually a pretty big feather in your cap, whether you agree with the decision or not. She would have had an influence on American policy at that point. And so I think that's definitely something that she would want to, kind of do. She's certainly taken shots at bigger fish in the past. She took a shot at Donald Trump.
Here's the funny follow-up.
Yeah.
Does that mean, in a metaphorical sense, she is gambling? Because if she loses, couldn't they counter-sue and get all their legal costs for all these years paid, in which case you cost the taxpayer money?
Yeah,
Wouldn't that potentially have its own negative political implication?
Yeah, I think that, look, we'll see what's in the answer when Valve kind of comes back. I'm sure they'll want their attorney's fees on this.
Sure.
I don't know they'll get them, but I think that they'll ask for them. And I think that, I think that it's just really a question as to, is this more political? Why is she the first one to bring this? As you mentioned, this has been happening for 13 years.
Overdue, right? If it's a big deal. In fact, as you even pointed out, you could actually argue that it was a lot more direct in the past, that you could get this to the dodgy sites. Now they've made more abstraction.
I have my own ideas about that, because obviously, politics doesn't happen in a vacuum, and obviously Mamdani has recently won his election. He's took over, as the mayor of New York, and he is.
I moved out of the city of New York.
He has talked a very good game about what he's going to do with the budget, and so Letitia James has fully endorsed him, stood with him toe. She's made public appearances with him. Fully, she absolutely believes in what, whether she does or not, but publicly, verbally, she says she does. And then, lo and behold, this lawsuit was manifested. And to Harris's point, Letitia James is going to be remembered as the person that brought litigation against Donald Trump for fraud, was found in a court to have a solid enough case. Remember, jurors said Trump had committed fraud. That was what he was accused of. He'd misrepresented the value of several properties to secure a bank loan, and in doing so, had committed fraud. But in setting the fine, and I think it was north of $500 million, it was then later ruled upon appeal that the fine was so high, it was unreasonable and violated Donald Trump's Eighth Amendment constitutional rights. And therefore, he was found guilty of the charges, but didn't have to pay the exorbitant fine because it was too exorbitant. Now, that ultimately, she's appealing that. And ultimately, that is a big fat L, because she did campaign on, quote, getting Trump, And so all of that is relevant. But since then, Mamdani has come in, and he wants to raise money in the state to do all of his fantastical things, free bodegas, free public transport. I don't know what else he's doing.
Where's the free dragon laws?
Free housing.
Come on.
Exactly. Free dragon laws are coming now. And
state
so
grocery departments.
Yes, yeah. So as a result of that, I think probably they've consulted and been like, what could we do on the books that would be a big money raiser? Were we successful? And as a result, I think this case has been brought. And that's not to say it's without merit. I don't want to sound cynical like everybody else, because as I think you probably picked up from Harris's body language and the way he's talked about it, this is the strongest case against Valve I've seen. I have to actually say it. There is a kernel of an argument, and they get really specific in the middle of it. And I definitely think a court could be compelled to view this as gambling on the basis of the argument, irrespective of what's gone before. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely some political careers potentially riding on this.
Well, and, I think that just to kind of talk a little bit about what might distinguish this from things like Mason v. Machine Zone. And, Mason v. Machine Zone, a large argument is that those, again, Mason v. Machine Zone is a case where there's Game of War. The thing with, what the hell was Justin Verlander's wife's name that used to do all the advertising for that shit? Kate Upton.
Yeah.
By the way,
goat.
right?
The fucking goat.
The goat.
Yeah, she is a beast.
Duncan's a big fan.
Oh yeah,
I certainly was once upon a time. I'll tell you that much. I haven't checked in recently, but you know,
Justin Verlander though, man. Oh my god. All right, whatever. Anyway, she used to do a ton of advertising for this shit. It was on my television all the time every time I watched a hockey game. But as I was saying, I think that case, the argument that we were talking about before, right? Like it was about money. You know, is there a loss of money? Is someone gaining money? And they're basically saying, well, you're not gaining money here, and you're getting what you're paying for. And you know, the fact that this is not tradable on the third-party market is very important because there's terms of service which prohibit that trade. And basically, you can't just sell that currency that you're getting from that when you spin that wheel, so to speak. You can't just sell that good that you get when you spin that wheel. The only thing you could do is sell your account. And we don't let you sell your account. You're not allowed to sell your account. But even if you do sell your account, you're selling your whole account, including...
Can't even pass it on in a will, actually, as far as Valve are concerned.
So, but with respect to Valve, I think what is interesting is that they have taken a different approach. And so I think that does distinguish this a little bit here. Because I think I can't remember what paragraph it was, but somebody was asking a question about... I think it was a content creator was asking a question about whether or not something was permissible, whether or not a sort of business was permissible, a gambling website was permissible. And they're like, no, you can't do gambling website. You cannot do a third-party gambling website. And then that person was like, well, what about like if I just did like a third-party marketplace? And I think at that point they're like, you know, that you got to follow the terms of service is what they said. But they didn't really say no. And so it's just like they're kind of taking the position that, well, actually, the terms of service don't really ban that kind of thing. It's actually permitted to kind of exist. But if the terms of service did prohibit a third-party marketplace, I think there would be a very, very strong argument that Valve would win this case because there's basically no third-party marketplace. I don't buy this bullshit that because I could buy a Steam Deck using the Steam community, and then I could go
That's
to
such a fringe case. Like I've never even heard of something like that. Like fair enough that
they actually say that though. Not even making that up. They actually say that.
They were reaching so hard to basically like transport the V-Bucks, the Valve books into a real-world application. That is a bit silly. That isn't the good part of the case.
No. The
also, another similar question, right? As you say, if the terms of service said you're not allowed to do this, naive question. Could Valve just put that in the terms of service but never enforce it?
Well, that's what I think they did.
If they knowingly didn't enforce it or whatever, you know?
I think that's what they did, and I have to find the exact, paragraph that talks about this, and it's hard for me to do that. But there's a provision in this which basically talks about how they basically did that. How they basically said, you can't do this kind of thing. You can't go ahead and trade on these third-party marketplaces. And then they're like, but they're not really enforcing that. So that's, I kind of think what they're talking about here in this respect, and that's a big problem. That's kind of distinguishing from the other cases that have come before it. It's really their knowledge and permissive like the permissive nature of how they act towards these third party marketplaces. I actually don't necessarily. Let's actually here. So I'm going to just read you section 103 of this. This is on the amended complaint. Valve further demonstrated its abundance of cash marketplaces for skins in 2017 when it was contacted by by the way, I want to know who this person is. When it was contacted by a professional Counter-Strike player who was interested in starting a gambling website. A lawyer for Valve replied that Valve did not permit such sites and told the player that if he did start a gambling site, don't use CSGO items in your business. The player then asked if Valve had any problems with him creating a cash marketplace for Counter-Strike skins like the site CS Money. By the way, I'm not a huge Counter-Strike player, so some of these, these names I haven't heard of. But the Valve attorney provided a much more measured response, saying that other than general compliance with Steam terms and agreements, Valve did not have very many restrictions for what businesses, players, and teams can be involved with, other than the prohibition against gambling. So basically, they're saying here that they're kind of allowing that kind of thing to happen. They're permitting the third party marketplace to exist, and for this thing of value, this thing to generate a thing of value, which is what distinguishes it. So Richard, to your point, I do think that this case is a little bit different than perhaps the other cases that we've seen. Yeah,
I completely, and I'll also add, they might be missing the forest for the trees, because the OPSkins stuff fascinates me. Because in 2016, Valve could have been under no illusion from reporting I did and other journalists did, multiple journalists. I mean, I get a lot of credit for this, but there were other journalists that have since quit that covered this
Are there
stuff.
any other esports journalists at this point, by the way?
Well, we're clinging on.
I mean, we got 3 on this channel, and then I think that's
James.
Not even me. To be
James Fudge
be
won't
clear.
even mind me joking about this. He's literally fighting for his life right now. Get well soon, James.
Yeah, I saw about that.
And the rest have all been bought by Saudi, so
Put it this way, it's
all
not a
replaced
joke.
with AI.
In League of Legends, essentially, like we unofficially promoted random leakers on Twitter to the new journalist class. Like that's just what League of Legends is, for example.
Unfortunately,
that's one of the biggest games. So I don't think there are any new one coming, but that way.
But we
I used to, by the way, this is sorry to interrupt. I used to get hit up by people. Actually, this is like a thing that we used to do that we don't really even care about so much anymore. But when ESG would have, sorry to go off on a tangent. When ESG would have like a new hire or something like that, we would have kind of like a security like measure that we would talk about like, people reaching out to you and like, look, we've got all the contracts on our website. People actually used to care about what was in those contracts, and they used to care about what those values were. No one gives a shit anymore. I can't remember the last time someone talked to me about this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's the truth.
But yeah, so the OPSkins part is really, really damning. Whether Letitia James and her legal team realize this or not, because in 2016, it was a matter of public record from reporting that I did and others did, that the people that were running the rigged casinos were using OPSkins to cash out. So it was the money laundering hub for all of this. For the fucking FaZe casino, for the, all of this bullshit. OPSkins is literally where it all went through, with the guy who owned that site and subsequently sold it.
Maybe just talking about the kind of mechanism that worked. You had a third party gambling, essentially like maybe you gamble on esports events or something like that with skins, and then you'd exchange them on OPSkins.
Yes.
That's kind of what you're saying.
So here's what it would do. So OPSkins did such high volume that ultimately when your bots went through trading OPSkins, whatever you wanted, you just got almost instantaneous.
So the liquidity was there.
Yes, so the liquidity was there, exactly. So basically, and on top of that as well, the guy who used to own OPSkins, I mean, again, you can either take me at my word or whatever, but he actually met with a lot of these other gambling sites owners and talked them around some of the more like technical aspects of the law. Because remember, a lot of these gambling sites, they were registered in tax havens, so they wouldn't have to comply with exactly this kind of lawsuit. And so he was more than aware of that and more than aware of how it would benefit him. There was this famous meeting they all had, I believe it was in Vegas, where all of the people that had founded these gambling sites, no doubt, by the way, including the player that asked Valve if it would be okay.
Do you know who that is?
Multiple players had gambling sites off the books. I mean, multiple in Europe and NA. So it would be impossible to pin one down. Whoever actually thought of asking Valve was probably an idiot because the rest were just doing it, So anyway, the big ones, the Phantom Lords, etc., they all had a meeting in Vegas and they said, we'll divide it up. We're going to register in this tax haven. You register in that tax haven. You register in that tax haven. That way, if one of us gets got, the whole house of cards doesn't fall down. We'll all encourage. There was all this like inter-website advertising at the time because the key was to entrap as many people as possible. Because CSGO Lounge was toppling. We were entering, that was like 2014, 2015. We were entering a brave new world of skins gambling. And a lot of these sites advertised provably fair systems, but did not adhere to them. And that was what we exposed with the Phantom Lord case on my YouTube channel. And basically, where did they all cash out? They all had an agreement to cash out at OPSkins. So...
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. That is where you went. That is where you went. And by the way, as I said, the owner of OPSkins, he sold that website after having made an unbelievable amount of profit. I mean, like ultimately, if you wanted to ask yourself who made the most money from skins gambling, it probably goes Valve, and then the guy who owned OPSkins originally. So
it's actually funny.
Yeah,
I didn't know. Yeah.
It was a criminal conspiracy. I mean, again, to your point, it's why I think RICO charges back then would have been the way that you brought this whole, House of Cards.
Yeah, and I don't know that I think that we'll see kind of how this plays out in terms of whether RICO charges are ultimately brought. It's not like this is kind of over. I think that there are, I think that there are there are multiple websites that are engaging in this kind of activity. And so ultimately, whether this is successful or not, like I said, if I were hedging a bet, I'd say no, just because I think that it's just crazy to me that you could even I don't see much of a distinguishing factor between this and trading cards. I think that is a very good argument that Valve is making. And by the way, I do also think that their PR on this is very strong. Like, I think that what they actually say, and now I'm just going to read the letter. I don't even think we've talked about the letter here.
Yeah, I got it in front of me, yeah.
Yeah, they say, we respect New York's right to determine the laws governing behavior in the state. We will, of course, comply if the New York legislature passes laws governing mystery boxes, something that it has not done despite considering the issue a few times. Right. Such laws would be the result of a public process, presumably with input from the industry and New York gamers. This type of commitment, the NY Attorney General demanded from Valve went far beyond what existing New York law requires, and even beyond New York itself. It may have been easier and cheaper for Valve to make a deal with the New York Attorney General, but we believe the type of deal that would satisfy the Attorney General would have been bad for users and other game developers and impacted our ability to innovate in game design. So what they're basically saying here is, it's actually a very interesting tidbit what they just kind of said.
Yeah.
They're basically saying, one, we actually had a deal on the table with the New York Attorney General where we could have basically said, okay, we'll maybe make this payment to you, and we whatever. And they told her to go pound sand. They basically said, screw you. Like, we don't think what we're doing is wrong. And, the fact that you're only bringing this against us when this kind of activity has been in existence for decades is crazy to me. And so, no, fuck you. We're not making a deal. We'll see you in court. And they don't give a shit about the court. I mean, like, look, they're going to spend millions and millions of dollars in court costs. But to be honest with you, it's a rounding error for them. Like, they don't give a shit.
I've only seen them lose one lawsuit, and that was in Australia, and that was over the refund policy on Steam.
There was a 2016 lawsuit they had. I don't really remember too much about it. I think it was I can't remember exactly what I don't know. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I think something happened, but whatever. Anyway, the other interesting part about that, what they just said, is actually take it to the New York citizens, because this is not like, this is you overstepping your boundaries, and the citizens don't actually want this. And I think that's really relevant because I think it speaks to a little bit of the turning of the tide of gambling in the United States more generally. And Richard, you spoke very briefly about, I think you said you were talking about what was happening with the gambling in professional sports.
Yes.
But there was something called PASPA, which basically prohibited. I don't know if you remember PASPA in like 1992 was when this was a statute that was enacted that basically prohibited all states other than New Jersey and not Las Vegas, Nevada from having their own intrastate gambling enterprises. And the tide in gambling is such right now that in 2018 or so, maybe it was 2017 or 20, I don't remember, there was a case that got all the way up to the Supreme Court called Murphy versus NCAA. And in that case, they basically said that actually this PASPA, which prohibits state legislatures from permitting gambling, it's actually unconstitutional. And that kind of has opened up this floodgate, so to speak, of gambling, which is kind of poured into this marketplace right now. And nowadays, it's in a sense sustaining a lot of this business itself. Like, if you just looking at esports right now, every single big sponsorship is a gambling sponsorship. Every single one of them. You're not getting. That's where the money is coming from.
I mean, traditional sports as well now.
Traditional sports as well, but but think about how it's actually crazy to think about this, Monty. But like, think about how different that is from even 40 years ago. Like, 40 years ago is not that long, and like the New York Islanders were winning Stanley Cups 40 years ago, right? Like, it's not that long ago. Back then, Pete Rose got banned from baseball for gambling. Like, Pete Rose, who is one of, if not the greatest hitter in the history of the Major League Baseball, so the MLB, in the history of baseball in America, did not get inducted into the Hall of Fame, even though he was the best. Why? Because he gambled. And he didn't even gamble against his team. He was a manager, and he gambled for his team. He said, we're going to win.
Didn't fix a game.
Which is weird, because to me, the idea you would only gamble on yourself to win when you are is about the most American thing I could ever imagine. That's gangster. Isn't that what America is? You know?
Yeah, correct.
But that's what he did. And I don't know how that result went. I don't know necessarily that he's doing anything other than trying to win a baseball game, which presumably he would be doing anyway. Right. So what's the difference? But like, he was banned from baseball. He was outcast from baseball for
and as
decades.
You say, will never be in the Hall of Fame.
And will never be. Well, he's dead now. But yeah, he didn't make the Hall of Fame. And so it's just like, yeah, exactly. So, but that is kind of what gambling looked like in America, in the 70s and the 80s. Now you see this tide where you can't put on a baseball game or you can't put on a hockey game without seeing something about, DraftKings or FanDuel
and not only that, but people forget that, especially now that the Raiders are in Vegas, that the NFL itself, they were like, we don't want a Vegas team.
Don't do it.
But famously, the NFL for decades said Vegas cannot have a team because of it's just because the gambling industry is in Vegas. Like, it had nothing to do with anything else, but it was seen as such a black mark that only the Raiders were allowed to, take that mantle.
I mean, I'll tell you this. I was there when PASPA got overruled. Yeah.
Really?
And yes. And let me tell you, I don't know what your expectations might have been. Dark day in Vegas, brother, for real. There was a lot of, because again, I had, Vegas had unbelievable access. I was the king of esports as far as Vegas was concerned. So I had keys.
Were you living in Las Vegas at the time?
Yeah, swear, yeah. And,
wow, that's cool.
I had access to rooftop suites and underground offices, bro. I was for 2 years, I was living the dream, because not only was I working for a company that was funded by the runoff of the World Series of Poker, I was also being trotted out to all these meetings as the esports expert. And so anywhere I went in Vegas, holy shit, Richard Lewis, we'll talk to him about this. PASPA was a nightmare. It resulted in, apparently, what I was told, record low betting in Vegas, because people were now able to bet in other states.
Other areas.
Yeah, right. So you didn't have to come to this specific territory to bet. And they were all looking.
Which, by the way, was actually the part of the lobby for Las Vegas in the 90s when they went ahead and passed that. They actually, I think they restricted it to Atlantic City and Vegas. At
the Nevada state, obviously before my time, I would have been a kid. But my understanding is that they ultimately liked the restrictions because Vegas had the exemption. But when it was shut down, they were like, what the fuck are we going to do? Because all of our big betting markets are plummeting. And that's where esports entered in, baby. They were like, what can we do with this shit? And that was where it was like, well, it's completely corrupt, easily manipulated. And they were like, tell us more. So it was a very interesting time.
There was by the way, I would never do this. I didn't do this.
Me either. Whatever you're about to say.
Just to be clear, I did not do this. So any regulator, whatever. But I remember when I was kind of thinking to myself, this is 2016 when I was with H2K at the time, and I'm just like, okay, someone linked to me like a Bovada line here, and Forgiven hadn't come back yet. He hadn't announced that he was going to be playing because we brought him back from Greece. And I'm just like, this Bovada line is wrong. This is very, very wrong right now. And I'm just like, someone could take advantage of that if they do that. And I'm just like, that's kind of when I was like, oh shit, this is a legitimate, you have insider information at that point, and you have an obligation to not share.
By the way, that's even one area. Look, book yourself in for the future episode. In the future, there will absolutely be loads of people in esports get their shit pushed in for insider trading with certain markets and betting websites. Because, bro, in esports, they're so dumb they won't even realize it's illegal, bro. They'll just do it.
You want to know the one I missed out on, Harris?
It doesn't take much of an expert to basically be like, look, guys, these guys are setting a line. They're doing it on publicly available information. I have information which is not publicly available, and I know that this is the expected value on this bet is bad, and so I'm just like, or I should take that bet rather. So yeah. So that was something I was thinking about.
Here's the one I missed out on. Right. So when I did the iBuyPower story, I knew about 48 hours before the bans came down the pipeline that all the iBuyPower players were going to be banned, and likely iBuyPower would withdraw as a result of that. And an iBuyPower Hollow sticker at that time, they sold for about $170, $150 each. I could have loaded up knowing the value was only going to go one way. They now sell for about $86,000 each.
What?
Crazy thing is, this like really old version. When Richard was about to do this, actually, what looked like a really old version of him, but with hair at the time, came out and said, "Quickly, you've got to do this!" And then suddenly someone just whisked him away, and then I don't know, sort of like the Biff version of Richard Lewis. Because by the way, the joke in CS always is that would be the great sports almanac moment. You just go back in time and buy all the Titan and fucking like that.
But like, put it this way, I could have easily been a multi-millionaire.
Yes. No, by the way, one of the saddest things about CS esports especially is
there
was a million things like that in the early days.
Ethical.
In fact, another one classically was in the early days of CS esports. If you'd have streamed and you were anyone famous like us, people would just give you keys to open cases. At the time, we all thought we were above these things, Harris. We didn't realize, like, we essentially swerved all the things that would make you a millionaire and just did all the really hard work for, like, all right money at the time. That's our career in a nutshell, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we all thought we were on that trajectory. I feel the same exact way. Believe me, I could tell you some stories about, the wrong path I've taken on that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board so much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks, especially because obviously March Madness is now here. If you're in America, keep track with that. There's also, of course, the NHL and the NBA playoffs coming up, which are going to be very exciting. And as you guys are probably aware, PrizePicks does esports too. So if you're following along with Counter-Strike or League of Legends or other major esports, the way it works is you just pick players and whether they're going to exceed that stat, so more or less than, say, the number of kills in a game of League of Legends and Counter-Strike, or assists if you're in League of Legends. You just pick between 2 and 6 player stats. You could mix and match it. If you get your picks right, you can cash in. So they basically have every sport, every esport you could want. Especially First Stand going on right now. Obviously, you guys know in League of Legends, but every week there's a new League of Legends or other esport event that you could play along with Prize Picks. So we're very happy to represent esports with Prize Picks. You guys can download the Prize Pick app today and use code Horsemen. That's plural, HORSEMEN, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Horsemen to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
No, but just kind of bring it back. I was at, interestingly enough, we were talking about PASPA, I think that it's kind of interesting to talk about just generally the attitude towards gambling in America too. And one thing that I used to talk a lot about, which we don't really talk, too much about anymore, was actually the Wire Act. And the Wire Act has kind of been, this. I think that the best way to put it is it's been a prohibition of interstate gambling is kind of the best way to look at it. And there was actually a question at one point when we're talking about the prohibition of interstate gambling. Remember, we're not talking about intrastate gambling. So distinction, obviously if you're going to there's a reason why gambling on sporting events is so state by state. You can't really do it across state lines. And certain states actually prohibit it outright. So if you go play DraftKings in certain states, there's actually restriction on your ability to go and do that. There was a lot of back and forth as to whether or not this was actually prohibiting sports gambling or more than sports gambling at the time, right? If it was all forms of interstate gambling, and it wasn't clear based off the text of the statute as to whether it was actually intended to apply to interstate gambling. And then there was a question back in like 2020 or 2019 when I was talking about this, is like, okay, well, there's clearly an argument right now about whether this is interstate or whether this is sports gambling or not sports gambling. And then I'm like, well, where's esports fall in that? And I'm just like, because at the time when this was created in 1961, it was like
exactly what we were doing in Vegas, by the way.
Yeah,
exactly what we were doing.
And I'm just like, well, this isn't very clear, because if it's just sports gambling, is esports sports? And then it's just like you have to kind of draw from certain analogies as to, you know, in a P1A sense, it might be considered sports if you're getting a visa. So that was always something that was super interesting. But yeah, anyway, all this is to say that, like, I think the gambling industry in sports more generally, and there's been a broader acceptance with respect to whether or not gambling is permissible. So I actually think that, like many things, this case will ultimately turn on the attitude that the public has towards this thing. And I could actually see it being the case that if this were to actually go down the line and people were like, wow, this is illegal, I actually think the New York State residents and certain New York State people would actually step in and perhaps try to regulate it themselves, which is really what they should be trying to do anyway. They should be trying to regulate it themselves and actually kind of create some sort of an ecosystem for this to exist in, because no one really dislikes it. Like, I feel like, look, if we're going to permit certain types of gambling in this state, we already permit you to go ahead. And we've only talked, and I'm going to ramble, we've only talked a little bit about, things like cards, and we've only made that analogy. But the truth is, New York State permits you to go gamble on sports.
Don't
I
they
can
all
go on
have lotto
FanDuel
as well? I'm missing. Isn't there like state lottos and something? Am I wrong on that?
There's
That's like what your grandma bets on, though, isn't it? Like
yeah,
news station or whatever.
Right. Like, but I guess the argument there is you're paying directly to the state to participate in the state lottery. Okay. So they just want their money is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, sure.
But we actually have sports gambling. You can just go gamble on sports right now in New York. You can play DraftKings and do all that shit. So it's like, to me, you know, what do they do? What does DraftKings have to do? They have to, you know, perhaps pay a little bit more money. They have to put put a disclaimer out there, provide gambling assistance for help like that. But why is that not some sort of thing that we can have in connection with this? Like, why do we have to redo the entire Valve ecosystem? And by the way, not just the Valve ecosystem, but at that point you might be talking about redoing every single ecosystem in trading cards as well as other video games. And so it's just like, I don't know that this is...
and also, like, I guess the ramifications of this are so potentially huge, and maybe this is why they're bringing it, because they think there's an easy win here to start the chain of dominoes that, like, takes out Magic the Gathering, or, you know.
If it did that, it would be a net good. Wizards of the Coast are a disgrace.
I've actually heard some things about Wizards recently releasing so many more packs, like, in the past.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's outrageous, the number of collabs.
Well, I mean,
and,
here's the one that'll tickle you, Harris. If we're doing a sidebar, right? Get this: when they negotiated the deal with Marvel, because Marvel has its own online game, Marvel Snap, they get to release the extended universes, the universe decks, for things like Spider-Man, right? And so the cards, the physical cards are like, you know, Spider-Man, Awesome Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Dr. Ock, all that bullshit. Yeah. But on the online version, they can't use the Marvel IP. Really? So I buy a physical deck. Usually what you can do is scan put a code in, and I get it in the fucking game. But I don't get the Spider-Man IP in the online game. I get a legally distinct card that is identical in terms of how much it costs mana-wise, exactly what it does, but it has a different name and no Spider-Man IP whatsoever in the online game. Yeah, exactly. Problem fucking solved.
This just sounds like the dumbest thing.
Like, correct. They've had to make exactly 2 versions of every card for all the Marvel IP because of the deal they negotiated, essentially.
That just sounds like an absolute nightmare. And I actually wouldn't even want to play the online version because it sounds like such a
what is the the question is, what is the ripple effect? Like, let's say that for whatever reason, I think it's unlikely, you know, New York State wins, right? And they get all the restitution and this ripples out. Like, we know the next step is the dominoes fall in all the other states. Every state is in for the payday, right? Because now there's precedent and it becomes very easy.
They're at least going to bring the suit. Yeah, they're at least going to bring the suit.
Yeah. So then Valve pays a ton of money. Like, does this actually affect anything? Like, how much does this affect other industries? How much does it affect the game industry in particular? Because this could be, I mean, the scope of this is huge.
Yeah, and honestly, like, just to be super candid about it, like, it's not, Valve is just one game, right? I have clients that work in UGC that are making games in Roblox and Fortnite all the time, and they're putting in similar mechanics to like, just, you know, like spin a wheel. And like, they're not thinking about that. Do you want me to go tell a 19-year-old that they have to, like, and not just one 19-year-old, like all the 19-year-olds, actually, you're not allowed to do that. Like, what do you think the odds are that they're actually, like, paying attention to any of this shit? Like, basically zero. like they're going. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know. Do you guys follow anything to do with Roblox? Like there is like
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I mean,
I've
this
seen
is
Roblox,
kid
play it.
so.
Didn't you say
just to rattle off
Yeah.
some of the top games,
Yeah.
like steal a brain rot is like the number one thing, and they've got all these like crazy things walking around. Like, to be honest with you, this is not the kind of shit that people are concerning themselves with. Like, this is just like, you know, a bunch of, you know, it's just crazy. But no, Monty, you're right. Like the absolutely, what you would need to do is you would need to go ahead and basically redo all the kinds of games, the ecosystems that have formed around these games, the ecosystems that have formed around anything when you're buying a chance to have something that has a secondary marketplace put in place. And then there would actually, presumably, if there is a secondary marketplace, need to be strict, at least adherence, or at least guidelines with takedowns issued and you know, monitoring of those marketplaces to prohibit them from kind of coming up in the first place, so that there is nothing of value that is kind of being given other than what is in these games themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, but this is the question: is like, if the New York, like, my question is this: does the New York Attorney General think that if they win this, that it opens the money printer, where then they can go after Magic, let's say, and Magic's been in New York for 35 years or however long, 40 years the game has been around at this point. So, like, is this? Do you think that the New York Attorney General believes that this is the easiest path to accomplish something potentially much more earth-shaking?
Yeah, I'm actually, you know, I'm not actually sure why they wouldn't just go directly after Magic. You know, honestly, maybe it has to do with it's actually an interesting question. And maybe it even gets into some area of copyright that I haven't even thought about, but like just the doctrine that you would, you know, the doctrine of first sale, you might own something and you might actually own those cards, but you might not actually own, you might have a license to this thing. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But like,
Correct.
I think that, you know, there's a whole list of reasons why they might have chosen Valve, and I'm actually not sure why. I think there's obvious, without opining on Letitia James' strategy on this, I think there's obvious implications for the video game industry, and I think that every single card distributor is probably also taking note.
By the way, that's what I was going to ask. You've sort of answered it there, though. But I was going to ask, how is this, though? What is the argument as to why this is different than Magic the Gathering and baseball cards? Because again, surely if the logic is you're aware there's a third, I'm pretty sure the baseball card and Magic people know that in real life you can sell it on eBay, etc. I'm pretty sure. In fact, it's also, if people don't know, a comic book shop. One of the main ways you actually make the money isn't even selling the fucking booster packs. It's like you tell the dad, you know, you can just buy the card you want, but you sell it at a mad markup. Like everyone knows that. It's a famous thing.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of thinking about this out loud right now, and this is not like a well thought out argument or anything. Like, you know, this is coming after shooting the shit with you guys for 2 hours. Like, I think that, you know, what I would say is perhaps it might be impossible to kind of enforce any kind of restriction on a secondary marketplace for something like a Pokemon or for like a Magic the Gathering, right? Like, particularly because, you know, the mechanism of which I'm trading something, I actually own that card at that point. That belongs to me. I don't own a license to it that needs to access some sort of an API that needs to be traded online. I legitimately take ownership of this card. This is just like something I'm just thinking out again.
By the
like,
way, what you're saying is nothing minor. A lot of people watching this episode will probably also have forgotten they don't actually own a skin. They essentially have it. Valve's grace. And as pointed out, if you die or if your account gets banned, you will not in any way have any legal recourse to that.
This is, by the way, also why you as a gamer should actually like the concept of NFTs, because then you would actually own the skin.
They're
right?
dead, Monty. It's over for you.
No, they're not dead.
You
they're
can't
definitely
grift
not
your
dead.
NFTs here, sir.
I mean, what I thought was so funny about the NFT discussion was basically
the
like
Flashpoint
NFTs
I hate are over, sir.
The NFTs are stupid in the way that they were used. But the thing about it is that you
reminded me of that. Even though it was funny, Monty, that is one of the wackest things you've ever done. Where you made that like apology or whatever, like the server log. Sorry, you made the server log in NFT. Like,
it was.
Listen, it was funny.
It was definitely one of the wildest ideas. The server log NFT. Never forget. But
it was good for the joke in the story. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But look,
that was just PR, man. But anyway.
Go on, Monty. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
No. My point is that people should actually would have wanted, because like CS skins are effectively proto NFTs, except you don't own them. So people are like, I hate NFTs, but you should actually want NFTs in the case of like basically, you know, what you buy in game.
We here at the Four Horsemen are delighted to be sponsored by Ridge. What is Ridge, you might ask? Well, Ridge, among other things, sells these delightful wallets. Mine's made out of carbon fiber, but you can get them out of aluminum or titanium. You can see how thin this is, and basically it holds up to 12 cards. You just got to pop it out. I've been using this every day since I got it. It's nice and thin. I mean, you guys are probably carrying around some of those old ratty leather bifold or even trifold wallets. They're just kind of lumpy. This just slides right into your front pocket. And as you can see, mine has a money strap, but you can also get a money clip if you happen to carry cash around with you. It can also hold an air tag if you like, just to make sure you don't lose your wallet. It comes in over 50 colors and styles to choose from. They often have crossovers with major sports leagues. If you're a sports fan, you can get one branded like that. It's fantastic, and all Ridge products come with a lifetime warranty. So it's the last wallet you'll have to buy. They also have key rings. They have backpacks. They have power chargers. It's all really advanced tech, and it's very sleek and modern. They have over 100,000 5-star reviews and have RFID technology. So right now, Ridge is having their once-a-year anniversary sale, so you can head to ridge.com and get up to 40% off. That's up to 40% off at ridge.com. After you check out, they'll ask where you heard about them, so please tell them the Four Horsemen sent you. That is important. Thank you to Ridge for sponsoring us, and I hope you guys upgrade your wallets.
To tie everything that you're talking about together, though, and Harris will have noticed this as well with his keen legal mind. What's super interesting about the argumentation, very keen, in my opinion. You will, and I'm sure you've noticed the same thing. What happens is they build this argument about value, about the market, about the third-party markets, and you go, cool, can't wait to read the conclusion. Then they move on. And guess what they start talking about now? The teenage mind. And it's very jarring.
Here we go again.
Yes, it's very jarring because what they suddenly start focusing on isn't the super compelling argument about value, hermetically sealed marketplaces. Is it really gambling? What they start focusing on is child gambling, teenage gambling. They are very focused. They include the Steam terms of service agreement that you will be 13 or older, but then they make the argument to say, but if you are 13 and you are playing Counter-Strike, then you would be too young to discern that this
and
is
you're not
gambling.
Checking age. There's no KYC, and, that kind of stuff. Like what you have to check a box, but you're not verifying that box. Is what they say, right?
Exactly.
It's just like,
and they also do a weird thing. And by the way, this will be, I think, 133 on the amend. I don't have the amended argument. They've added 6 more paragraphs, but I've got the initial one in front of me. They also they talk about entrapment, and obviously we all have a legal understanding of entrapment, but what they say here is entrapment refers to the impulse that drives players to continue to spend money on games of chance in an attempt to recoup losses. As with casino games, the potential to recoup losses by winning a valuable item can drive individuals to repeatedly purchase keys to open loot boxes. Now, this part is fascinating to me because not only does it take the word entrapment and pulls it in a direction,
completely different direction than what you might otherwise think of if you've read any law. But
correct. Which I was fascinated by because it's like no one in the room hearing this argument is going to think this is entrapment. But what it then does is it also tries to imply that there is a mechanism inherent to buying cases that had I bought a case and got a shit item and then sold it, because it took me $2.50 to unlock that case, and I might get a 20 cents item. The argument is that in losing that real value of $2.30, I would then chase cases to get it back. I don't think that argument holds up whatsoever, whether you call it entrapment or anything else. You know, so there's some very dubious stuff in here, but it is fascinating because no other lawsuit against Valve has attempted these arguments.
No, I totally agree. And also, not to kind of belabor the point, but there's also other ramifications that, I mean, look, I don't want to go on like a tax. I don't want to start talking about like the IRS.
Go on, do it.
Honestly, tax is actually very fascinating to me. I'm sure that most people don't give a shit about it, but I actually
do. The Horsemen do.
Well, I think that there's an argument. Put it like this: if I receive something that is convertible, if I receive a form of currency which is convertible, and has like a real world value, I actually think that and I would have to talk to a tax person to confirm this. I think it's actually taxable on receipt. And I'm sorry, it's taxable on receipt of that thing. And so I think the question is like, if I were to receive some sort of like a skin as payment to me, let's say,
I mean, it's similar to getting crypto coin, right?
It's the same thing as getting crypto.
You can have the realized gains, all that shit.
Right, and you can have the real, exactly. And so it's just like, am I going to get, if someone gives me a skin, they give me a skin, am I getting taxed on the value of that skin on receipt? But if this is a thing of value that is convertible into US dollars, I mean, maybe. So it's just like, there's actually all kinds of,
I mean, put it this way, the obvious argument, and not even as a lawyer, but I can already see the way these fuckers' brains work, would be, and now everyone's just going to put their real salary into skins and trade, so they don't have to pay the tax. Like, no one would actually do that. But again, it just has to be possible to make the case, right?
Yeah, right. And so I think that's usually when you kind of start talking about the, again, open market and the closed market on these kinds of games, right? Because if it's an open market and it is convertible into US dollars, then perhaps it does have a US dollar equivalent value. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever talked about Steve Bannon, who's another political figure. We've talked a little bit about politics on this call.
Oh, I'm familiar with him.
I know you are.
We're all familiar.
But
he might have been directly involved in employing me at one time, but we don't talk about it anymore.
But what's interesting about Steve Bannon, I'm not even going to talk about his politics.
No.
He actually operated a World of Warcraft gold farm in 2007 to launder money.
It was even literally mentioned in the Epstein files that this was a thing he did.
Was
it true?
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
It was something he talked
No, I don't want to say
about.
I'm in the Epstein files, but by one layer of abstraction, unfortunately, I am.
But that is interesting though, because the idea being that World of Warcraft gold is not convertible.
Yeah, listen, Harris, apparently Epstein himself used World of Warcraft gold as a way to move money around.
Yep.
Right.
And so your worlds are colliding now, mate.
Right. And it's like, well, listen, I'm such a huge WoW fan. I've got all these WoW posters in the back, but you can't see them right now. But that's the point though, right? Because if there is a marketplace for this, then it is essentially the same thing as US dollars. So why wouldn't I just pay you in gold to avoid taxation? Right. And so it's just like, that's kind of, I could redeem it whenever I want to redeem it and not get taxed on it. So it's just like, that's kind of what the argument is in terms of these marketplaces existing. And certain games do a better job of policing their own marketplaces than other games. I would say that like a game like League of Legends or Riot does not really permit any trading of skins absent trading of, at least I haven't played in a while, but it didn't when I was playing. You could trade your account, but that again, you're getting rid of the whole account, and it's not even clear how many skins are on that, or what else is on that. So I think that things like that is very different from a thing like a World of Warcraft thing where I could just trade gold in the game, go to g2g.com, buy that gold, and it has a real world dollar value associated with it, which is the same exact thing as the third-party marketplaces for
Bro, this is what I
love
about America, both love and hate. The idea that like there's a bazillion real-world crimes. By the way, in esports, even more damaging crimes, match fixing, illegal shit, ripping people off. But none of that gets investigated. None of the power of the US government and the state is put towards that. But they're gonna like fucking zoom in with a satellite. Like, what did you just trade a picture of a gun to someone else? What the fuck are you doing? What's that doing with a gun there? Like the things they picked.
Pictures of guns too. We like guns in America, so it's like, whatever.
By the way, there's the angle you need to do if you want to politically combat this. You need to make it that every American has a spiritual legal right to be armed in video games, including the skin. That's the opposite counter-political angle. Someone hit me up, I will be a witness, an expert witness on the stand for you. Exactly.
And that's actually something that they were talking about, was like violence in these games. When Letitia James was actually talking about, it's like, these are violent games and these are kids that are playing these violent games. So she was kind of implying that it's a bad thing.
Here's another super interesting argument. Remember when they were arguing over whether crypto should be a security? And there's this thing that you apply to anything to determine
the Howey test.
The Howey test, exactly. I don't think anyone's ever applied the Howey test to cosmetic items in a video game.
Well, I'll tell you, the Howey test might be getting applied in some other aspects in video games.
Okay.
Not in short order. Particularly in the Roblox and
right.
UGC spaces.
The lawsuits in Roblox that have fascinated me are all to do with is it the Virginia Attorney General bringing litigation that they're not protecting kids?
Oh, you're talking about yeah.
So that's what I've been focused on mainly. I'm going to do a whole Roblox special. We might do it as the Four Horsemen. Who knows?
Yeah, why not? What's even more interesting is and I know we're kind of running out of time here, but and we talked gambling the whole time, so I'm going to talk Roblox right now. It's actually very interesting is that these games, obviously Fortnite and Roblox kind of permit the monetization of these games which are being created on their platforms.
Yeah.
And what's even more interesting is that people are buying they're buying interests in these in the right to receive revenues from these on-platform games. And so then so let's say, for example, I own a game on one of these platforms, and someone spends money to acquire a portion of my interest in that game. And by the way, this is facilitated by a platform like Roblox. Like Roblox will basically say, I have a game, and there's a group that owns that game, and then they'll pay out Robux to the owners of that group.
Yep.
And so if I'm buying into that group at that point, am I buying a security? And that actually is a very important thing that you kind of need to ask, because if you are buying a security, which is if you're buying a essentially what you're doing is you're using money in a common enterprise with an expectation of profit based on the efforts of others. That's the Howey test right there for you, right? Mm-hmm. And which is what I'm doing. I'm investing money in an enterprise that's being run by people in this group, expecting that this is going to return a profit based off of the efforts of other people that are developing the game. And so there's an argument that this is security. If that's the case, there's all kinds of restrictions on my ability to sell those interests. And so that's something that absolutely needs to be considered. That's one thing. There's questions about imputed partnerships.
Tell you what, it's a good job you guys broke away to get rid of all those bloody invasive taxes. They were really, getting in your ass and sort of fucking with your ability to live and have just a normal life and be enterprising, weren't they, mate? I tell you what, it all worked out in the end.
It all worked out.
Well, we ended up just being a bunch of schmucks anyway, so it's kind of what it is right now. Anyway, so all I was saying is that all these other games, and they've definitely got some other things happening right now.
Sure.
So I think.
Do you think someone would apply the Howey test to cosmetic? Would there be any value to it?
You're talking about in what? In Roblox?
Well, let's just say CS, for example, because a lot of people do treat it like a stock market.
Yeah, and that's a point that the complaint also makes is that it compares it to other financial markets.
It doesn't explicitly reference the Howey test in this lawsuit. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would need to think about it more in a commodities perspective, to be honest with you, as opposed to necessarily a securities perspective. And frankly, I'm not a securities or a commodities attorney. Okay. I am a corporate attorney that does some stuff in tax. But this is so specialized now that we're talking about whether or not we're going to apply the Howey test to a skin in CS is not something that I could tell you I've thought too much about. But
it's interesting though.
By the way, if you are a lawyer though, create an article to write for some sort of a law magazine. If you want to get the kids in,
get in there.
So I have another question, Harris. Do you think that there are going to be amicus briefs filed by Wizards of the Coast or other game developers?
Question,
on this?
There very well could be. I mean, because you see what Valve did here. They're basically rallying they're rallying the Horsemen, so to speak. Yep. They've got their flags going up. Where are my my flag carriers? Where are my barons? Come help me, please.
Don't you think Riot and Epic should be supporting?
You'd think they would all be united
theory?
On this, wouldn't they? Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I don't think it'd be I think there might be other instances where they've filed amicus briefs together, but I think that look, I think their interests are aligned. I think that this does have broader implications on the video game industry. I think that definitely something that they'll I actually think I could see it happening. I think it might be likely.
By the way, Oh, sorry, keep going.
I was going to say, I imagine this is on everyone's radar right now, for sure.
By the way, I understand, like, the law obviously is not the same in every place, and you're specialized in US law and a specific type of US law. But just as someone who's speaking as an expert on this show, right, I'm sure you must have seen some of the cases, similarly, loot boxes, etc., in Europe and different European countries. One of the reasons I'm also surprised that anyone's thinking that this is going to happen in America is I would have thought by now, like, if people don't know, it's actually very limited what even has happened in Europe. Like, I can tell you, I live in the Netherlands. They just had that thing where you have to put like an X-ray scanner thing now in the game so that you can look in the case. So they've done some small things, but even so, I would have thought surely there'd be like a small European country would be the first place this sort of thing would be fully outlawed or you'd get sued for. So is there a reason why it hasn't really happened anywhere in the world so far? Like, it seems weird it would be America. You'd think that'd be the place that's more like you could make the argument to let it through, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think there have been, and look, I think that there has been some regulation, I think, in Europe. I don't really remember where it was. I think that it was honestly, I think maybe Belgium at one point.
The Benelux region. Right. It was Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg all together because they seem to do everything in tandem for reasons I can't explain. But yeah.
Well, they're the lowlands. I mean, they're close in geography, right? I mean, different.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I won't get into the history of it all, but at one point, for sure, they were all buddies. Yeah, but I mean, like,
were they part of Burgundy at one point? I can't remember.
Well, now that's not my area. Listen, I'm reading a book on Balkan history. That's where my mind's at right now.
Yeah, I think that was a war between Burgundy.
Exactly, Cassad's got to me. But here's what I will say to your point. That's a little bit different because the decisions those countries made came after, I believe, a 5-year study. And again, the focus was on what it was doing to kids and teenagers. And they did a study about the malleable brain of the teenager and being exposed to gambling mechanics. And it was presented to all the major countries of the European Union. It was essentially a strong recommendation that you pass legislation, which is why we've got countries where it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different in Germany, a little bit different in France, a little bit different in the Netherlands. So that's what happened there.
You can also see why it's the obvious. It's why I alluded to they were clearly trying to like nudge towards that with the 11-year-old kid. Because the reason that's always a clever political strategy is who wants to be the guy who goes, no, I'm in favor of kids getting hooked on gas. That's the hard position to argue then, isn't it? That's why you take
that is something
the optics, as it were.
That is something I flippantly publicly said when this first became an issue in 2016. I caught a lot of heat for this, Harris. I said the best time to have a gambling addiction is when you are a child.
Why is
Listen,
that?
There is
philosophically,
you can get broken comeback from it. Exactly.
Can't lose your car.
Yes,
can't starve your kids. But but people go.
Why is that controversial? That just seems intelligent.
I agree. That's what I said.
Again, the optics on it don't look great, do they?
There I was. So I had to go hard the other way and then shut all these websites down to redeem myself. So.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. No,
because of that, Steele had to pay the ultimate price, the iron price. Some would say, ironically.
R.I.P. Josh, love you.
I'm not too familiar with EU law on all this stuff, and frankly, like even like EU law legal procedure, that's just not something that's like super in my wheelhouse. But I would imagine that you're absolutely right. They seem to be more of a bit heavier handed on the regulatory side of things.
Sure.
So I would think that maybe they would try to pursue some of that. I know that.
For a point of information, Harris, if you open a case in those territories, so I believe how it works in the Benelux region is you get an X-ray scanner key, which lets you look inside the case prior to you opening it to determine whether it's worth your while or not. So you don't so you don't waste the key in other parts.
Which, by the way, here's the problem with that, Richard. I know that I get why that's an interesting compromise. That sounds more hype. That makes me want to open cases more. So I feel like it's had the opposite effect.
The naughty X-ray machine.
That sounds dope.
I get it.
It's like, I'm scanning it. I might open that one. That's fucking sick.
I love that.
I'm not a pleb just opening any old case, but I should have lost it.
And in the UK,
hold on, wait. When you use the X-ray machine, do you know what the items are inside of the case?
You can just see see what's in the case, I believe. You don't know what you're going to get, obviously, still. But the idea here is that way you don't open it if it has no really good skin.
Exactly.
But you still
see
probably
if
going to
there's
open
a knife in there, essentially.
It's why it's a clever compromise. You're still going to open it because it's still going to have a good skin in. It just might not have like the AWP or the fucking knife.
In the UK, I don't play a lot of CS these days, but I do play Dota. For instance, if they release a series of cases and there's 13, you are guaranteed to get one of each one. If you buy 13, you will get all 13. And then if you continue to buy to get the rare, very rare, and extremely rare ones, you know, that's on you.
See, this is where it's hard to be a man of principle, because I don't want them to take it out completely because I like doing it. But if you want to fuck them and kneecap them a bit and give me better skins and a better chance to get them, you know what? I'm going to allow it. Just going to allow it. Let's see how this one plays out. Let me have that X-ray scanner here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's funny.
so there's lots going on with the case openings depending on where you live, and I think the other interesting thing is, and this is
by the way, as a quick aside, I'll just say this now because it's an elephant in the room,
Mm.
right? An obvious reason why, even if they do this, certainly they could fuck Valve in the US and Europe could lock down. One thing you will never avoid ever is China will always have their own games in the market forever till the end of time, and everyone can go bust from any country doing it. And good luck extraditing anyone from China. So you can certainly punish specific countries, companies, in games, but this problem, if you believe it exists, will never not exist. Come on.
The reality is, I think before we get to a conclusion, because Harris is absolutely right, this might go all the way to the Supreme Court. I mean, it's that big a deal. Valve will just ultimately change and evolve, and they're already doing this. We've talked about this on previous episodes. So the market episode, for example, there's not going to be cases as we know them anymore. You know, they're doing this thing with the fucking laptops now, where it's like you get a virtual laptop. If you haven't seen this, Harris, you open it and it goes, "Yo, I'm a super secret arms dealer. You want to buy this gun for this?" And you go, "No, that's shit. You want to buy this one?" "No, that's shit." And you get like 4 or 5, I think it's up to 10 now. I think they pumped it up to 10. You get 10 chances, and you might get one valuable skin above market value. And then it goes, "You want to pay for this?" So remember, you've already paid for the laptop. And then in that laptop is a deal to potentially buy a skin at market
make it
value.
Again, more steps, more abstraction,
which
more
I think is worse than opening a case. I think that's more.
It's absolutely worse. Now you're buying a laptop. You're spending money to get a laptop for a chance to spend more money.
Yes, correct.
So maybe eventually you'll spend money to get another laptop that could get you more.
So let you know which
things.
laptops are the best ones to buy.
Exactly.
Keep going. It's infinite totals. Keep going.
So that's what they're doing in CS now, and I imagine that'll become the norm.
And then, believe it or not, all the lawyers go, "Damn it! Do you mean they got around it? Well, guess we're gonna have to do another case. Sorry, another 1,000 an hour, sir. Like, fucking hell." I love it. We're getting a real sense of how the US operates. Yeah, I love it.
I mean, this is an industry. It shouldn't be an industry, to be honest with you. But you know, this should just be nice. Yeah.
It's all right, Harris. You're one of the good ones.
I appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
You've essentially. I haven't seen Bryce in ages. You've essentially become our replacement for Bryce. Also, one of the good ones. I haven't seen Bryce.
You know, Bryce is doing a great job right now. He's actually been doing some good golfing. He's been doing a lot of golfing recently.
Yeah.
So
I do see the trajectory of all successful esports lawyers. Come in pro bono. Create a firm, get young hotshot lawyers to do their work for them, golf a lot.
See, what happens is you start, it's like the growth politically, like you were referred to, Harris. You start out really left wing. Next thing you know, would be nice to play at Mar-a-Lago, though. My business partner would like a game there. You know what I mean? Next thing you know, where are you? Exactly.
I was actually telling Richard, I don't know if you remember this. I told you, Richard, at one point, I think it was in 2014 or so, you were doing a call-in show on Twitch.
Yeah, that's right.
At some point.
Trash
talk.
Yeah,
Trash Talk. And I actually think I might have called in at one point.
Yeah, I think I remember, actually.
Yeah, and so
did you have an edgy take? Was it an edgy point? Was it just some generic?
No, dude, I was just an idiot at that point. So I
disagree. I disagree. Anyone who called into Trash Talk, we pre-screened all the calls, so
I remember.
You were always interesting.
Was Jacob on with you?
That's why he became a person. Yeah. Yes, that was one of his origin stories.
I think he's also he's totally out of esports.
Yes.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are, which is funny because I think this is it a Jacob Wolf article that is cited in this.
Oh, was there a Jacob Wolf article?
Yeah,
No, I think it was Cecilia, no?
Oh, it might be
was
Cecilia. It's a 2017 ESPN article.
Oh, wow,
so
really?
I can't remember who wrote it, but it's about kids gambling. I thought it might have been a Jacob Wolf one, but
I know they cited
the
Bloomberg, so Cecilia did something on that.
Yeah,
Cecilia.
Cecilia essentially resurrected the stuff after it had sort of kind of died. After all of the first wave of lawsuits failed.
In 2016, 2017, I remember all that. Yeah, well, that's interesting. No, I mean, look, I mean, it's kind of funny how many people came up through that show and came up through you personally. For me, I think that might have been my first exposure, actually, to
I've always said
esports.
My true esports legacy is all the esports love children that I begat along the way after 21 years. And I guess now, Harris, I have to officially recognize you as one of them.
Yeah, there you go,
and
man.
you are
test checked out.
You are entitled to some of the land and the holdings.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll sort it out when I'm dead.
So any final comments you have on this, Harris? Like, this is just something, at the end of the day, the purpose of this was
appreciate if you're reminding me that they're even called Roblox.
I know.
I feel dirty. I know. Feels wrong.
But like to come into this, it's the importance of this episode was just to describe what's happening, because there are no conclusions yet. It's just, I mean, Valve hasn't even answered the complaint. They've just made the public statement. So this is going to go on for a long ass time. Most likely.
Oh, the cliffhanger's crazy on this episode. If you're a fan who actually thinks there's going to be a resolution, fuck you. You just wasted 3 hours.
Yeah. We don't have a resolution.
By the time we
guys.
resolve this, it'll probably be the one Horseman, and it'll be Harris. We'll all be dead.
I actually wonder, so how many have I've done, like, was this my 4th or 5th one? I have to be getting up there in terms of the amount of people that have come on the episodes.
I mean, you're the most recurring guest, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I would say you. Like, that's what I mean. I think you started the 4th Horseman.
Okay, well, listen, man, I appreciate the time.
You and Roger Ebert.
I'll be the honorable. Yeah, there we go. No final thoughts, man. I think Richard and Thorin just said it best. Like, this is going on for years at this point, and we're not going to know. And I think in all honesty, depending on if Letitia James does go somewhere else after the NYAG, if she wants to go do some other job at something at this point, like, who knows whether this case comes to conclusion.
Oh, I have one last question. Again, I'm going to do
another. What happens, Harris? Just before Duncan's question, what happens typically if an AG brings a case and then doesn't win re-election while the case is ongoing? I have no idea about that.
Yeah, so it depends on. Yeah, it's a political question. I mean, that's why so much of this is political, right? Like, you look at some of the cases that were. I'm not going to talk about my political proclivities or anything like that, but I'll tell you that there were a lot of cases that were brought against Donald Trump, and when he came into power, they were suddenly not cases anymore. Right. And so the same thing for attorney generals that have been bringing cases under the Biden administration. When Pam Bondi gets in office, they're not there anymore. You could kind of even look at what was happening with Facebook and all that stuff, and the kind of posture that has been taken with respect to monopolies online. That has completely been changed given this administration's approach to those kinds of things.
And so, probably lobbying, etc., as an obvious angle.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think that the answer is, Richard, it might just go away. Yeah. And so that's why a lot of this is really stupid, because you might have someone like, I'm just going to use the Biden administration, kind of what it was trying to do with Facebook and how it brought that lawsuit to, basically talk about, how it was a monopoly. They might bring that suit and they might try to really hold them to the fire on that. Or they might have a policy that says all non-competes are, illicit in America and we can't do that, right? And then a new administration comes in and they just take completely different policy approaches to these kinds of things. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't anticipate that. That's the thing about, like, continuation of government in New York. It's going to be another Democrat that kind of comes in. The question is,
but here's the thing, Harris. Couldn't that also imply, and Mitch, like you said about, like, let's say Facebook, for example, notice the guy who was behind Facebook magically had a different political change of heart in the last few years, didn't he? Which might have been aligned with this. So similarly, couldn't you argue, okay, it's not going to be a Republican, but couldn't you argue that actually another thing all these companies, Valve and all the massive people who might get involved, could do is they could fund the political opponent who was a Democrat to win the same seat or something like that? Couldn't you essentially fund their rival?
It makes the legal industry look pretty bad. What is this stuff that we do anyway, right? Like, rules for thee, not for me.
Absolutely.
But why not?
I had one other question which goes like this. Since you said technically they're trying to try these as felonies as well, would it really just be a fine at the end you pay money? Could anyone ever actually go to prison for this?
No, they're not bringing these charges against people individually. Like if you look at what happened with the Trump administration, not Trump administration, with Letitia James, who brought this against the Trump organization, there was like a $500, I think Richard said $500 million fine or something like that.
About that, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a fraud case, and right, they're looking for money here in connection with this. They might, in the harshest way, like I think they would say like you can't do business in the state of New York,
right?
Which is ultimately actually what I think they did do to the Trump
one felony that's there is a Class E felony.
It's a Class, yeah.
So it's not exactly a big deal. What is it? It's promoting gambling in the first degree.
That was what 2,510, I think, is what it was. Yeah, I mean it's like it's one of the lowest severities of felonies.
It's like whatever.
I think but I mean, look, the penalties in terms of the money could be significant just because of the amount of business which is transacted in New York, and I imagine that's in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars with Valve. So yeah, that's my final thought, Monty.
All right, there you go. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show again.
Yes.
We love you for soon,
Horsemen.
Guys. Richard is back. That's right. Richard is back from his event adventures. So
God fucking help me. So now I'm in the Monty content gulag. So I have to record everything before I go away again.
What happened?
That's right.
No, I'm just for some reason I'm back in vogue where I keep getting hired for esports events. So I go away for 2 weeks at a time, and then that means Monty calls me up and goes, "We should record 4 podcasts in a row in advance before you leave." And then people message me going, "Is everything okay, Richard? You looked really tired in that last episode of the Four Horsemen." And I'm like, "Yeah, I fucking wonder why." But anyway, it's all good.
Last episode we did of what was it? It was on franchising that we did.
Yeah.
I think you were drinking some beers.
I did, because I wasn't expecting to talk, but then I realized to get a few beers in me, and then I always talk. But actually, I was more equipped to talk about this one than the franchising.
I think you did great in both.
That's why I love you, Harris. That's why you're the fourth horseman of my heart.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Until next time, esports delenda est. We'll see you then.